the water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking with Founder
Noah, welcome to Founder Secrets. Longtime friend, longtime EOer, entrepreneur organization. We just had a president of our chapter on a few episodes ago. So welcome on board.
Really happy to be here, guys. It's been far too long, as I was saying. I don't know. It's been a couple of years, probably, something like that.
We can't stay put anywhere except Chicago. So
I'm actually,
you're not in Chicago anymore?
I'm not in Chicago anymore. I'm actually between Nevada and Newport Beach, California.
Sounds like a tax.
Could be some truth to that.
All right. Well, we're recording. And I'm glad Taylor and I and other people have finally convinced you to leave Chicago. This is good news. You're also you're always I feel like on the list of the most youngest person in the various groups you belong to. And I remember I used to also be in those groups, but then I aged out of them. So I'm wondering, how do you feel about that? How do you what's your state of mind on you being like the youngest in a lot of the groups you're in?
You know, I think generally being the youngest is always an advantage, right? I think especially early on, it was the biggest advantage, which is people don't see you as a threat yet. So everyone wants to help you. And they're like, oh, it's the young guy. Like, that's adorable. Like, look, you've been able to do this or do this. Like, let me help you. Let me make this connection for you. Let's do business together, whatever. But I think you realize that that gap closes pretty quickly. And, in the series of time, it was probably between 19 and maybe 25. And then people don't care anymore. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, now you're kind of like my competition. So I'm not going to help you out anymore. And so I think it was a small gap. I do like being the youngest person in the room. I think there's a lot of power to that. But I also think it's kind of, and I don't know if you guys have had a similar experience, but most of my friends are way older than me, right? I'll be 30 next month. And we just went, my girlfriend and I just went on a weekend trip, and they're in their late 40s, right? And it's one of my best friends. And it's they have a family, and it's a weird thing because you end up kind of alienating or a lot of the friends that you might have that are your age if you're, in business and entrepreneurship, and maybe you're just doing things that other people your age aren't.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I always felt like I was the youngest in a lot of groups. And, it's funny that you say they didn't see me as competition. They also saw me, they would give me a lot of advice, and they would give me things because almost like if they were a guy, they might have, a son that was my age or a daughter that was my age. And it's so funny you mentioned 25 because that's the exact number I would give it. It was great. 25 years old, fell off, and everybody treated me as if I was 50. So,
and the one other thing I'm thinking about though is that also it kind of shifts your perspective of reality and where you are, right? Because for a little bit, you're like, oh, I'm the youngest guy in the room, and that's really cool. I'm here, right? And look, these people are older than me. I've been able to get to some level of success that, is somewhere near them. But then you start to think wait, why am I not as successful as these people, right? Over time. And you're like, wait, why is this person doing way better than me? And they've started more businesses or sold more businesses or made more money or whatever. And it's it's frustrating. And then you go, well, you take a step back and you're like, well, they've been in business for 30 years longer than you have. But you don't really think with that rational mind. You're just whoa, I'm way behind. So you feel like you're starting you're starting the race in last place, and you're just constantly trying to pass someone. And it's probably not healthy, but I think that's I don't know, that's kind of how entrepreneurs, I think it's kind of hardwired in your brain to be competitive like that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting you mentioned the difficulty of having friends as an entrepreneur, especially in your age group. I definitely, right? Because what others might be, investment banking and, I don't know, going to Tulum on a weekend early on, maybe, like you said, we're at, conferences mingling with 50-year-olds to grow our business on that weekend. So I'm curious, how have you dealt with that or built friendships with peers in your age group?
I think it's tough, and it's a perpetual struggle. I think also your life, especially when you're young and you're in business, like so much of my identity in my life is in business. So I find like when I go, I don't know, just like you go out somewhere and you're meeting people that are your age, like my kind of default thing I talk about is business. And I think that
Right.
turns a lot of people off. But also when I go to have like small talk and I can't talk about business, I'm like, I don't know what to talk about. Like I'm like sitting there and I'm like, I'm struggling and I feel super like socially awkward because I don't even know it. I'm like digging at things. I'm like, oh fuck, I don't watch sports. Like that would be like my easy one, but like I don't know. And so then I'm just like kind of digging and I feel so uncomfortable and they can probably sense that. So I would say
I haven't read the news in 5 years, so I have no idea what's going on.
it's a perpetual, yeah, it's a struggle. And it continues to be, but I think, you know, it's the EOs, it's the YPOs, it's like those type of networks that give you those people that are your age, right? That you can meet, that also like you have a lot in common with. And I think those have probably been the most powerful tools for me.
Agreed. Go ahead.
So you've transitioned, you know, you were an entrepreneur and then you transitioned more into the investment side, right? Like family office investing, and, you know, you started a fund, sold the fund, right? What caused that change? And what are the big differences between being an entrepreneur and being more of an investor?
Yeah, and it's been a strange transition, right? We had a staffing firm that we sold at the end of 2021 to a family office group that operates a number of businesses. We also had a fund that was basically off our balance sheet of our company, right? We were investing out of that, like virtually off our own balance sheet. We sold a piece of that to the family office group as well, which is really like, hey, we want to align incentives moving forward. So today we invest in fintech and financial services, very narrow, right? So when we were investing previously, it was like, hey, whatever piques my interest, like let's go invest in that. And granted, looking back, a lot of that probably wasn't, you know, a lot of those decisions, whether it works out or it doesn't, they weren't smart decisions to begin with, because it was like, hey, I'm way out of my depth and like I don't really know that industry. But it was really cool because you get to go really wide, right? So it's like I know a little bit. Like we had a conversation about most industries. Like I have some knowledge base and I can sound knowledgeable, whether I'm truly that knowledgeable in it. Like question remains. But now we're super deep, right? So it's like we focus on one industry only. We own a group of businesses. So virtually anything that we invest in, we own a similar company. So we're able to understand, like, to a very deep extent, and probably underwrite better than most other investors that are in the fintech space. Hey, will this company work? Because we have a company that operates in that space and we completely understand it. We understand the issues they're going to go through. We understand growing pains. We understand capitalization, customer acquisition costs, things like that. But I think for me, what I've realized is I need a balance, right? I think just being an investor to me is like, doesn't give me a ton of energy. I think from the investment side, what gives me a lot of energy is you're meeting a lot of new people. You're getting you're always meeting passionate people, right? Because everyone's there to pitch some business that they're super passionate about. So that's really, you know, that's super fulfilling and gives you energy. But I need that building side as well. And one of the businesses that we started previously that we still operate is called Common Ground, and it's in the land space, in the farmland space. And so that gives me a lot of energy because I still get we get the investing side, but I also get that operating side. I'm still able to kind of scratch that itch. And I think I realized that I'll always need that. If I was purely investing, like it just wouldn't be super satisfying to me.
Do you still have a technology, development, like engineers all over the world business?
Yeah. So we sold it. We still operate it though. We still run the business day to day.
That's the one you sold to a family office.
Yeah.
Why would a family office buy a staffing and then also a partial fund?
So it's a great question. And we never intended to sell the business, right? We were like, traditionally staffing businesses are pretty hard to sell. They're great cash cow businesses, really good margin businesses, but they're very hard to sell because an acquirer will come and say, okay, great. Like your revenue looks really good, but let's show me like the next, 3, 4, 5 years, like where are the contracts? You're like, well, I mean, these people are going to keep working with us. And they're like, but is that contracted? Can we see that? We're like, well, no. And like, it creates like a very hard position. But for them, they owned a number of technology businesses. And so they owned a bunch of technology businesses in and around the fintech financial service space. So not only from the staffing of internal companies, also the cash flow side is good, but also to be able to do implementations on a number of these companies. So we're working with banks, financial institutions, other fintechs, things like that, to have that pipeline was really advantageous to them. And from the fund side, we also have a fund, right, in a venture studio. And so bringing that model that we brought from the venture studio side and being able to kind of transition that over to, hey, before our value is, hey, one, we're going to invest so we can bring you some money, right? But also we can bring you all these engineers. So let's help you build your engineering team and let's help cut that cost center down, which is generally the highest cost center for technology companies. But now for fintechs, right, and where we're investing, it's like we own a core banking infrastructure company, so we can help you with all of your infrastructure. We also own a bank, so we can help you with anything on the regulatory and the licensing side. We also have a software engineering company, so we can also help you with engineers that already understand fintech and understand how to do these things. So now it's like we can help you with all of these pieces of your business as a fintech company. So it's just a super compelling value proposition for the companies that we end up partnering with.
You bought a bank?
Meet? Yeah, you own a bank? Which bank? Is it Silicon Valley Bank?
So it wasn't a great exit, but it was a really fun ride up. No, it was actually someone that I've known for a long time. I guess I more met as an adult, but someone that was a friend of my dad's growing up. And we connected with my first business in my early 20s. There was always hey, maybe we can work together. Maybe we can work together. Never really worked out. And then over time, we just started to develop a little bit more of a relationship. So I think like the broader roadmap of where we can go, because, I think for us, my partner, Peter, and I, we looked at our staffing business. We're like, we can make a lot of money for some amount of time, right? We can pull a bunch of cash out of the business and that's fine. But like enterprise value is hard. So it's like, where are we going with it? Like, where does that go eventually? Right? Which is kind of a weird place to be because you're like, the business does really well. Like it's a really successful business, but like, where does that take us? And it was like, we need something bigger. Like what's going to be kind of the next, what are we working towards? Because otherwise, basically we're working towards, we're in a business of human capital, right? Because every new client we bring on, that's another person. So there's a lot of issues too, right? And it's like, every time you grow, it's like, well, that is also paired with like, issues and growth, they're pretty parallel because as you're bringing more people, it just, it creates issues in the long run. So it was like, either we try and scale this really big and maybe we get to, 500, 1,000 employees or something like that. But like, honestly, it's not super interesting. I think for us, we were looking for like, who's the partner to do something with where we can see a much bigger outcome and where we can go and see it in a, relatively short period of time.
So common ground is, you said, kind of the place where you still feel like you're building things, and that does have potential equity value. Is that right? What? Maybe
yeah.
What is it? How'd you start it? Or
we partnered with a couple entrepreneurs out of our venture studio. So they had an idea. We're working on something in the land space, and virtually what they realized was farmland as an asset class. About half of all farmland in the U.S. is leased. So it's not actually owned by the person that farms it. It's leased by a farmer to farm it. Yeah. Interesting, right? Huh. Nobody knows this. However, like renting farmland today is pretty similar to renting like an apartment before the internet. So what you would do is you'd go like put up a flyer on like a flagpole, or you put up, you'd go to the local coffee shop and put up a bulletin, or maybe I know a couple people and you'd say, hey, what would you pay me for, like, here's my property. What would you pay me for it? And Taylor, you'd be like, oh, I'll give you $200 an acre. And Flavio, you'd be like, I'll give you $220 an acre. And I'd be like, okay, I guess I'll take Flavio because I like him and he's offering me a little bit more money. But like, I don't know, there's a guy down the road that would pay me like $500 an acre. But there's no market, right? So we created the first price discovery tool. So think like what the Zestimate and Zillow did for real estate, which is like, here's what we think your land will rent for. And then an ability to put that up online, farmers come bid on that property, and then ultimately you get to choose somebody. And we started in that direction, which it's a hard business, right? Like ag is the clientele that you're serving is the average farmer is in their late 60s, the average landowner is in their late 70s. So like you're introducing technology into an already pretty conservative class of customer, right? That also is like the age of your grandparents trying to use technology. And so it's been quite an interesting ride. One of the new thing that we've been working on, like one of the new product offerings, is we actually started an insurance company. So we realized that there's an opportunity in crop insurance. So think the digitization of insurance, but for agriculture, right? So you think like Lemonade and some of these kind of adjacent businesses in the insurance industry were like, oh, insurance, like getting just typical insurance is like pretty difficult. It's not easy. You have to go through somebody to do it. Like you have to talk to someone. Like, why can't I just go online and do it? We're doing the same thing for crop insurance. And so it's been really fun. Like I've got a lot of energy from it. You're still like, you're learning new things. You're going deep on it. And it's kind of pushed us into this whole new opportunity.
Is crop insurance state by state regulated?
Yeah. So, well, you have to be licensed state by state, but it's federal programs, right? So like typical, what's multi-peril crop insurance, it's a federally subsidized program, but which is fairly commoditized, been around for a long time. But then there's a bunch of private products. So people create private insurance products just like they do in general insurance. But all of this, like today, you can't go online and get a quote for insurance on the crop side. Like you submit a form, they say someone will get back to you, and somebody calls you, and you go through this process, and like you're from the outside, you're like, this is crazy. Like what? But I think what's been interesting just around the whole model in general is like as we became these market makers with this first product, which is like, hey, value your land and then put it up for bid. People come bid on it. High bid doesn't win. You choose whoever you want. But like the average person on our site that leases their property through us is getting 39.5% more than they were previously getting, which like farmland's like a $3 trillion asset class. If you looked at that as real estate, you'd be like, wait, what? Like you can get 40% more by doing this? Like everyone would be doing this, right? On the real estate side, like I wouldn't care if it was like, my brother-in-law or something that's like living in an apartment I owned. If someone was like, oh, I'll give you 40% more for it, I'd be like, all right, you got to get out. Like we're getting someone new in. But
ruthless.
Ruthless, but like that's what it is, right? Like it's an industry. It's a money industry. And so I think we just see that. I think over time, farmland is going to act a lot more like real estate. Like it is an asset, and it's a large asset class. And we're trying to be at the forefront of that. But it takes a lot of time. It's definitely the most frustrating and most
what role do you play?
Challenging industry. One of the founders of the business. I focus a lot on the partnership side and kind of the vision for where we're going with the business. What's next? What's the next kind of frontier?
So you guys raised $3 million in January?
Last year. We announced it this year. We raised it mid last year. But yeah, we raised $3 million. We, eventually, just originally, we actually were like, hey, we're going to self-fund the business. We think this could be this little like cash cow business where we're just taking these transaction fees and great. We launched the product and we started having these people reach out, like users of the site reach out, and they were like, hey, are you taking an investment? Like, this is really cool. Hey, are you taking an investment? This is really cool. And at first it was really novel. I was like, oh, that's cool. But then over time it was like, oh, well, wait, we can take, we're going to be able to get investors like without reaching out to investors. Like, this is great. So we did. And then, we did a round last year. It was led by Ag Funder. They're like one of the predominant ag tech funds. We'll do a Series A at some point next year. But we're super excited about where we're going with it. I think the introduction of the insurance in parallel with the marketplace becomes super interesting. And yeah, I hope that next time I'm on here, I'll have some really positive updates as to where we are with that.
You sound really excited about it. And so that's really awesome to see. Did your fund where you're like working the other part of your life invest, or it's kind of a separate business because it's different space?
It's a separate business since we were already owners of the business.
How do you split your time? Because I know a lot of people at venture funds aren't allowed to invest in other stuff, partially because of conflict of interest potential, partially just because of time commitment. So I'm like wondering, how do you divide your time so that everybody's happy, right? And they're not like, hey, why are you spending all your time talking to farmers? We need you over here looking at investments, or the other way,
Just work a lot. So you realize like it's funny now, man, because I realized I was like, man, I'm more stressed now than like when I was before we sold our business. Like, why am I more stressed? Like life is good. And now, but it's like I'm like, oh man, I got to work more weekends and I have to work more than I was before, which I think is sustainable for a period of time. But I also realize like myself, I complain. I go, man, I'm so burnt out. I'm so tired. Like, what am I doing? But then I realize like when I have a little bit of time to sit still, like like I can be still for like 20 minutes and I'm like, all right, what am I doing? What am I doing? Like I need something new. So I realize like I need that kind of chaos in my life in a strange way where it kind of balances me. And it's like, as much as I say that, I'm stressed, I don't want it. It's like, I kind of need it. I think I see a lot of people that are younger, right, that are retiring and they like sell a business and they're like, I'm going to retire. And it lasts like a month or 2 months because you're so used to waking up, you have all this stress, you're like just ready to jam and go. And like when you wake up without that, you're like, what do I do? Like, how do I spend my time? Like you just kind of, I think, inherently start to build something new. And I think I'll always do that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like that show. Taylor recommended the show, and I watched a little bit of it. And they were talking to like these like people in their 20s, and this older woman was asking like, "Hey, why are you guys not working?" They were like, "Oh, we're retired. We're like mid-20s. We're retired." And they're like, "Why are you not working harder? You're in your 20s." Like, no, it's our teenage years that we're working hard to create our personalities. Our 20s are for relaxing. And then she was like, "Well, what are your 30s for?" It's like, "Oh, giving back to the planet and solving global warming." So I feel like that's kind of the phase that you're describing. But I still don't understand. How do you actually divide your time? Like, you wake up in the morning, which business do you go to? Like, how do you even know what to do each day?
I've got my life pretty streamlined. I brought in an assistant who like runs everything in my calendar. Things are super diligent. I think I've cut out a lot of the things that I would generally spend a lot of time doing so that all the time I am taking can be just super efficient. So I don't send calendar invites anymore. A lot of my email, right, is my assistant replying to somebody as me, right? So it's like doing like, boom, like they just reply as me, makes it super easy. And so
what
I
do you
started.
do? Like, what do you do first thing? Let's walk through a day like in Noah's life. What do you do?
I'll have like 8 to 9 in the morning. So work out in the morning. I do like a 6 a.m. CrossFit class. Generally from 7 to 9, I'm doing like what I call open loops. So anything like open loops, there's Dan Martell, I think is the guy's name, where I got the concept from. I don't know if he coined that term or what, but virtually like all the things that are left open, right? So all the things that are like, hey, I have to think, like this consumes my mental space because it's like something I need to get done that I haven't gotten done. It's like, let's close all that stuff out in the morning. So it's like all the little tasks of things that I actually need to do that are like need my time and attention to review something, to sign this contract, to, do whatever that is. And then a lot of my day is meetings. So I probably have 4 or 5 hours a day where I'm sitting like this, on video, on the phone, just doing planning and trying to delegate. I think a lot of the stuff that gives me energy, right, is doing like, it's connecting with people. It's being that connector and it's planning like, what's the next stage for our business? What's the next partnership we need? And then going after and finding those things and doing that. I think I just am a lot more effective when I can get in front of somebody. And I think I can move the ball forward when I do that at a much faster pace than me going back and forth on email and kind of jamming, but being able to physically get in front of people as well. So I make my best effort to do that. I'm traveling a lot when it's like, hey, I have a good conversation. And it's like, hey, I think there's some opportunity here. We had a call right before this, someone on the insurance side that we had like an initial conversation with. And I'm like, that would be a perfect person to have involved with what we're doing. Like we need to figure it out. Planning a flight like next week was like, hey, you know what? Why don't we get in front of you next week? You're across the country, but like, let's get in person because we can go back and forth like this and exchange ideas. But until we get in person and spend a little time, like you're probably not going to be super incentivized and, to actually get anything done. And so I'm pretty meticulous about that. Just trying to get in front of people to build relationships.
So can I say that I think a lot of times when people ask, like, what is the average day like? That everybody opens with, yeah, well, I work out for 4 hours and then I eat the healthiest food and I do this. Okay. You open by saying, I go to CrossFit class. And I think that some people, when they hear this, like, sure he does, but I've been on trips with you And you're the guy who like goes and will leave the group and go and like find a local CrossFit gym, or you do your own workout, or you do it outside. And that always impressed me because there's so much peer pressure to not, especially when you're on these trips and things. So I wonder, like, how important, or I mean, clearly it's important to you, but what impact has like this focus on fitness kind of had in your life and also around your entrepreneur life?
Yeah. I think even maybe stepping back from that, I stopped drinking like March or end of February 2020, right? So I haven't drank in 3 and some years. That has changed my life to a huge extent, like completely changed my life in a number of ways that relate to this. But now it's like, that was a big piece, right? I was traveling a lot. So it was like every, I don't know, 5 nights a week, I'm like out to dinner, I'm drinking, like I'm having a glass of wine, I'm having a drink, whatever. And then like the morning comes around and I'm like, oh, I'm like kind of tired. Like maybe I'll go work my way, like do a crappy workout, or maybe I'll be like, I'm going to go work out in the afternoon. Like now I'm in bed super early every night. Like there is no anymore like, I'm going to miss out if I don't go to this, 9 p.m. dinner, if I like don't go out with friends late. I'm like, I'm in bed at 8 p.m. I shouldn't say every night, but like most nights, right? So I'm like up early. I'm super well rested. My one plug is like 8 sleep. Love it. Huge fan of the bed. The mattress. That's also been a really good game changer for me. But it's like I get great sleep, so I'm getting up. I think what I'm trying to get back to is, and I don't know if you guys have this, but waking up with energy, right? Which I don't have anymore, right? I don't know why I've been trying to do like every longevity hack or biohack or all these things to like get that. Like, how do you just wake up and you're like, I'm like ready to go again? Like I remember that. I used to have that maybe in like my early 20s, and now I'm like, you just don't have that. So I'm trying to get as close to it as I can. But I think from the workout or exercise perspective, like it's just always been important to me because one, like mentally, I just feel better, right? Like I feel super good. I'm super clear headed when I go work out in the morning. I generally I don't eat till noon, or I eat a little bit after noon. So I'll intermittent fast. But I realize that like if I don't work out in the morning, I'm just tired, and then I'm also hungry, right? And so I'm like, it's just like a domino effect for me. So it's like, I'm really tired, so then I eat, and that eating then makes me a little bit more tired, and like I'm just not productive. I'm like, when I work out in the morning, I'm like super clear-minded. I'm just extremely productive from, let's say, like 7:30 until like 2 p.m. And then I can like get out of the, hey, here's like the, all this stuff I had for the day that really needs to get done. Now I can just focus on like things that don't necessarily need to be done today that I can just kind of chip away at and make some progress on. And it's competitive, right? Like I love I think it feeds into the entrepreneurial piece a little bit, right? Like CrossFit, it's a competitive sport, and it's just you. And it's, even every morning, like it doesn't need to be competitive, but you look around and you're like, everyone's doing this workout for time, or how many rounds can you do, or whatever. And you're like, I'm going to beat that guy. Like that guy doesn't know it. Right. But I'm like, I'm going to beat him. And then today it's like, I got to beat that guy. And so it just gives me that, like that little boost. I think I enjoy the pressure, right? Like I'm a much better operator. Like when I get backed into a corner, I'm like, that is my best work. And you try to like recreate that every day, because hopefully every day is not actually like that. Right. But it's like doing my best to create something to get that feeling.
Dude, this is amazing. I know we all have to jump on a call here, so I think we should consider this part 1 with Noah, and we'll have to be continued for part 2. But this has just been a episode of Nuggets, man. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us in the audience.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Noah.
Bye,
guys. See ya.
Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flavio. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down.